Hey everybody, Cahlen here, and I'm just out doing my morning sun gazing. And I wanted to share with you some thoughts that I've been having on the topic of Jing, which is a topic in Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, similar to Qi and something called Shen. These are the three treasures. I believe it's those three. And then how Jing specifically relates to possibly, this is my theory, to stem cells in the human body. So first I'll probably just explain to you what those two things are. So Jing is Qi. First I'll talk about Qi because everyone's kind of familiar with Qi. Qi is kind of like energy that your body and your mind, I believe, use, which it gets kind of from outside sources, from getting good sleep, from being out in the sun, from eating good food, those type of things. And this is like electricity which is flowing through your body. Now there's something else that they call Jing, and specifically prenatal Jing, which is, they say that you basically are born with a certain amount and you use it up. And you can use it up more slowly, and you can even use herbs and stuff like that to block leakage of Jing. But ultimately it's going to run out. You can't refill it, and when you run out of it, you're going to be dead. And as you're running out of it, you will age, right? Because it less and less, and then you will become an older person. So for someone who's interested in living a long time, which I am, I think, there's no sense in dying. Like, we all think it's natural, and it is natural, and everyone will die. Even if you're able to stop aging completely, something will happen at some point where you will die. But I think it's pretty sensible to, try and delay that as much as possible, because then you can learn and become wiser and have a better effect on the world, and know how to live in a more joyous, happy way. So that's why I'm kind of interested in the Jing and stem cell topic. So if there's Jing, and we understand that, and we just talked about that, so then there is stem cells. So Jing is kind of like this. What's Jing? People are like, well, they talk about it, but they don't really say specifically what it is. They do say it's related to the kidneys, which is interesting, which is not specific to the kidney organs. The Chinese medicine, they don't talk about the organs specifically. When they say kidneys, they're talking about a system and a function. Anyways, so stem cells are cells in your body which can turn into any cell. So if it travels to a certain area, let's say it travels to my nose, it's going to know from the frequency of what's going on around it, and from the DNA that it contains, which it shares with the cells around it, what type of cell it needs to turn into. And so this is, as you might imagine, is very tied to your abilities of your body to continue existing, because cells, they eventually die. So there's normal cells, non-stem cells, and these cells, they can replicate themselves maybe 50 to 70 times before they can't do it anymore. So then that cell line is basically dead. It's like a nose cell, right? And then a stem cell can come in and make a beginning new nose cell, which is then going to be able to reproduce itself 50 to 70 times as a nose skin cell. But the stem cell doesn't have that problem. It doesn't run out. It's indefinite. It's immortal. There are certain types of animal cells and bacteria and stuff like that, which scientists consider to be immortal. They can continue replicating. They don't have, I think it's called like the Heinrich limit, or something like that. That's the 50 to 70 times that a cell can reproduce before it stops. But the stem cell doesn't have that problem, but it has a different problem. And that is that the stem cell, the more, or maybe the longer, I think this is unclear to me, either the more it has reproduced or the longer that DNA line has existed, it no longer reproduces in a way which is helpful. It's kind of like like its DNA gets altered in some way, or some other effect is going on which causes it to be less effective, and eventually for there to be far less stem cells in your body than there are when you're born. So we are born with a large amount of stem cells, and as we get older, we find that the older you are, the less stem cells you have. Now people I mean, stem cells is based on kind of an old understanding of this back from, I think, like the 90s is when stem cells kind of came into the public consciousness. It was associated with abortions because that's how the scientists at the time were kind of getting the cells and studying them. But actually we found out since then that stem cells, we all have stem cells. There's certain places in your body where you can harvest them, huge amounts of them, and then you can put them back into your body, your own stem cells. You can take normal cells, and apparently you can turn them back into stem cells if you expose them to certain enzymes or something. So anyways, stem cells are more than just coming from abortions. And, oh, by the way, another interesting thing which I learned about yesterday is that if you're going to be using stem cells therapeutically, the best would be to harvest from yourself, but then the thing is that you're taking it from yourself, and it's a very harsh procedure, and it probably is detrimental in the long term. Then there is something called placental. So when a person gives birth, there is the placental, the placenta, which is the thing which is kind of hooks the child into the mother and allows resources and things to go back and forth, and it comes in through the belly button. This thing holds all kinds of stem cells which are neutral. They're not the baby. Well, so normally, like, if you have foreign DNA, something in you which your body doesn't recognize, then the immune system is going to react to it. So the placental is special in a way, and I can't describe because I don't fully understand, but it is special in a way that the stem cells that come from that they don't trigger those type of reactions. They're very neutral. You can put these stem cells into other people, and those stem cells will become part of the body. And that's something called chimerism. A chimera is basically any entity which has DNA cells. So we contain lots of bacteria, so you could think that that's different than DNA, but I'm not referring to microorganisms. I'm referring to actual body cells. So I could have a finger cell over here which has Cahlen DNA, and I could have a finger cell over here which has someone else's DNA. And there's multiple ways that this can happen. This is kind of sometimes the reason people get different eyes, sometimes the reason people grow both pairs of gonads. Lots of different ways it can happen in the womb. It can happen by getting transplants of bone marrow. Anyways, so this is something which is basically already normal. It actually happens to the mother. She's containing the cells of every child she's ever given birth to. So it is a fairly normal thing, and it does seem to be fairly, like the body accepts it, and there doesn't seem to be any big problems there. So far as we know, this is still being pretty heavily researched, and it's still fairly new. But anyways, so if you were able to get new stem cells, which are young, and you can't get any younger than placental stem cells, then you basically have, those stem cells still have the lifespan of a child, of a baby. So those stem cells could be in your body and replicating and becoming other cells in your body for the lifespan of a human. And this is also something that you could theoretically continue doing for a long time. So this has made me think that Jing, what the traditional Chinese medicine folk talk about, is really stem cells. And that's just a theory, but it makes sense to me. And I think it's cool when we can make connections between two different types of thought, maybe older thought or less traditional thought, which describe the same thing but in two different ways, and then notice that instead of saying one's wrong, we go, oh, actually you guys are just seeing it from a different perspective, and now we can actually use these together. So I think it's interesting. I think it's a possibility. Jing equals stem cells, and as we know, stem cells, this is accepted by science, decay over a lifetime just like Jing does. And if you're not getting strange medical procedures like injecting placental stem cells into your bloodstream, then that Jing's not going to get replenished. So it seems to me like those may be the same thing. And I'd be curious to know, I know I have some friends who are familiar with these topics, and some of you may know things that I don't know. So I'd be curious to know if any of you have thoughts on these topics, maybe know something I don't know, or have some ideas to add, or even if you just have questions about maybe what I do know about it. Just let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. So that's this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll share it with someone that you care about. It helps them, it helps me, and it'll help you feel like a healthy type of person. If you're feeling extra generous, you can head on over to cahlen.org/gift, and there you can basically learn of ways to help me feed myself, shelter myself, and to upgrade and repair my gear. All donations give you the option of having a 1-hour life coaching call with me. So, thanks again for watching.